For nearly 5 decades, the upper storage space at Elvis Presley's Memphis mansion remained sealed shut. This overlooked, dust-covered area had never been accessed by even his immediate relatives. Yet when it was eventually unsealed, the discoveries went far beyond vintage photographs or sequined performance costumes. Evidence suggested someone had occupied that space. The revelations triggered emotions so intimate and profound that they bordered on disturbing. Who had taken refuge in Elvis's attic through all those years? Were the Presleys aware? Let's explore the truth about who resided in Elvis Presley's secured attic for 48 years. Number 1. Graceland's Enigmas. During a pleasant spring afternoon in 1957, 22-year-old Elvis Presley pulled through the entrance of what would evolve into among the planet's most recognized residences. The Grand Ivory Mansion, situated on Memphis's outskirts, carried a price tag of $12,500 at that time, equivalent to nearly $1 million by current standards. He retained the existing name, finding Graceland perfectly suitable as it was. Initially, the property served purely as living quarters. Yet rapidly, Graceland transformed into an extension of Elvis's identity. The property encompassed nearly 14 acres, complete with agricultural buildings, horse stables, and equines wandering the pastures. The estate bustled with activity. Among the more unusual inhabitants was Scatter, a chimpanzee. Elvis outfitted him in miniature clothing and brought him along to social gatherings. Scatter constantly caused mischief, tugging at ladies' dresses or grabbing beverages directly from guests' grips. The household staff would comment that Scatter embodied Elvis's untamed nature, the aspect he typically concealed from public view. Come 1964, while the Beatles were conquering American audiences, Elvis established a personal sanctuary. He named it the Meditation Garden, featuring flora water features and ivory pillars rising beneath Tennessee's skies. This became his retreat for contemplation, reflection, and escape from external pressures. This tranquil space contrasted sharply with his dynamic stage character, revealing the Elvis rarely witnessed by others, serene, hushed, introspective. While the garden demonstrated his peaceful dimension, additional areas of Graceland exhibited more whimsical and extravagant characteristics. The space, dubbed the Jungle Room, featured emerald shag carpeting covering floors and even climbing walls, with furnishings resembling artifacts from distant tropical territories. Below ground, he maintained a television chamber where he could monitor 3 programs simultaneously, quite remarkable for the 1960s era. Within the racquetball structure stood a piano where Elvis performed his final melodies mere hours before his passing. Elvis Presley's death occurred here approximately 3:30 this afternoon. He had been discovered in his restroom, unresponsive and without breath. Everything transformed on August 16, 1907, the day Elvis Presley died in his second-floor bathroom. From that instant forward, Graceland transcended being merely a residence. It evolved into a memorial site, an enigma, and a moment crystallized in time. During the subsequent days, close to 100,000 admirers journeyed to Memphis. They gathered along roadways, mourned beyond the property barriers, and queued to pay final respects. Within the estate, Elvis rested in ivory attire with an azure shirt. Those who witnessed him in that state would retain the memory permanently. On August 18, 17 ivory Cadillacs guided the burial procession throughout the municipality. Notable personalities, including James Brown, Sammy Davis Jr., and Carolyn Kennedy, attended alongside Priscilla, 9-year-old Lisa Marie, and Elvis's devastated father, Vernon Presley. Elvis was interred beside his mother, Gladys, at Forest Hill Cemetery. The relatives anticipated he could finally achieve eternal peace, though that tranquility proved temporary. Merely 2 days following the funeral services, something incomprehensible occurred. During nighttime hours, several individuals infiltrated the cemetery, attempting to abscond with Elvis's casket. Their mission failed. They only inflicted partial damage to the burial vault before apprehension. Nevertheless, the implication was unmistakable. Even in death, Elvis remained vulnerable. Vernon Presley felt crushed. Unwilling to accept additional risks, he collaborated with law enforcement to discreetly relocate Elvis and Gladys. Under cover of darkness, they received new burial placement, this occasion within the Meditation Garden at Graceland, the very location Elvis had designed for peace and solitude. That singular determination altered Graceland once more. It ceased being simply a dwelling or even a commemorative site. It became a stronghold. Vernon installed additional security systems, employed guards for continuous property surveillance, and restricted access to specific locations, particularly the entire upper level. in the attic overhead. The stated explanation was straightforward: privacy. Elvis's sleeping quarters, the restroom where death occurred, and his intimate spaces were to remain undisturbed, honoring family wishes. Yet progressively fewer individuals accepted that narrative. When Graceland welcomed public visitors in 1982 following Vernon's death, admirers could traverse most mansion areas. They observed the kitchen where Elvis prepared peanut butter and banana sandwiches, appreciated the vibrant stained glass windows adorning the living area, and stood reverently at his burial site. Yet they never gained upstairs access. The stairwell remained cordoned. The attic entrance stayed secured. Even international leaders faced denial of upper floor entry. Tour guides consistently provided identical responses. The upstairs remains private, respecting family wishes. This arrangement persisted for 48 years. Nobody ascended upstairs. Nobody accessed the attic. It became integral to the mystery. Tourists would gaze at glittering gold records and rhinestone-studded jumpsuits, yet invariably looked upward, questioning what secrets lurked just overhead. Yet while the secured attic kept physical secrets beyond reach, something even more troubling was concealed in obvious view: the authentic account of how the king of rock and roll died. What knowledge did Elvis's physician possess that the remainder of America didn't? Number two. The King's collapse on August 16, 1907. Graceland fell silent. The day commenced like numerous others during Elvis Presley's later existence. Window coverings remained tightly drawn against afternoon sunlight, keeping the bedroom darkened and cool. At age 42, Elvis had grown accustomed to nocturnal wakefulness and sleeping throughout daylight hours. Occasionally, he'd remain awake for days before eventually collapsing into deep, medically induced slumber. His companion, Ginger Alden, awakened around 2 p.m. Elvis remained in bed, nothing unusual. She proceeded with her morning activities, anticipating his eventual rising. Yet by mid-afternoon, something felt amiss. The house seemed excessively quiet. Around 2:30, Ginger knocked on the bathroom entrance. No response. She pushed it open, discovering Elvis collapsed on the flooring. His pajama bottoms had descended to his ankles. His complexion had turned blue. She screamed for assistance. Joe Esposito, serving as Elvis's road manager and trusted friend, rushed upstairs. He immediately initiated CPR, while another person summoned emergency services. Paramedics arrived within minutes, continuing resuscitation efforts while racing toward Baptist Memorial Hospital, sirens wailing through Memphis's sweltering streets. Medical staff exhausted all possibilities, yet by 3:30, they declared Elvis Presley deceased. The announcement hit forcefully. Radio broadcasts interrupted regular programming. Admirers collapsed in tears. How could the king, merely 42 years old, vanish so abruptly? That same evening, Dr. Jerry Francisco, the assigned medical examiner, addressed reporters. He delivered a brief, definitive statement. Elvis had succumbed to cardiac arrhythmia. His heart simply ceased beating. Natural causes, he indicated. Case closed. Yet something seemed off. Even during 1907, observers could recognize Elvis had changed dramatically. The slender, energetic performer had gained substantial weight, nearly 260 pounds. His performances became inconsistent. He'd forget words, speak excessively between numbers, and occasionally couldn't maintain balance without support. Behind closed doors, the medical reality proved darker. The autopsy revealed evidence of years of harmful substance consumption, an enlarged heart, swollen liver, and bodily damage consistent with prolonged prescription medication use. The toxicology analysis released subsequently exposed what Dr. Francisco hadn't mentioned. Elvis's bloodstream contained elevated concentrations of powerful medications, including codeine and methaqualone, among others. Why did Dr. Francisco misrepresent facts? Some theorized he wished to preserve Elvis's reputation and spare his family additional suffering. Others believed the matter extended further, a cover-up, protecting not merely Elvis, but also the physicians who'd continuously supplied him with substances. This introduces Dr. George Nicopolis. Most knew him as Dr. Nick. He'd served as Elvis's personal physician since 1967. During just the final 8 months of Elvis's existence, from January through August 1977, Dr. Nick authored prescriptions exceeding 10,000 pills, including sedatives and painkillers. The previous year wasn't significantly better. He'd dispensed nearly 19,000 pills throughout 1976. Later investigations revealed that during those 8 months preceding Elvis's death, He'd received 195 prescriptions, approximately one prescription every 36 hours. Dr. Nick maintained justifications for everything. He claimed Elvis suffered genuine medical conditions, chronic pain from a military head injury, severe glaucoma, and a painful intestinal condition called regional enteritis. He insisted the medications were necessary for treating these ailments. Yet his most startling defense emerged later. He claimed he was actually protecting Elvis. Providing all of those medications, he asserted, proved preferable to allowing Elvis to obtain them illegally or from questionable physicians. If I hadn't provided them, he would have acquired them elsewhere, Dr. Nick informed medical boards. He claimed he was attempting to gradually reduce Elvis's harmful substance use while monitoring him closely. Yet the Elvis observed during those final days bore little resemblance to the man who once revolutionized music. He'd remain awake for days, fueled by amphetamines, then render himself unconscious with heavy sedatives. His dietary habits were dreadful: excessive greasy food, followed by strong laxatives attempting weight loss. On his final day, Elvis had consumed his typical medication combination. He played racquetball early morning hours, then returned to bed with additional pills. Those final doses likely proved excessive. His heart, already compromised by weight and years of harmful substance use, simply surrendered. Tennessee authorities rejected Dr. Nick's explanation. In 1980, he faced charges for 14 counts of excessive pill distribution, not exclusively to Elvis, but additional patients as well. A jury subsequently acquitted him. Yet that wasn't the conclusion. The Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners continued investigating his practices, and in 95, 18 years following Elvis's death, they permanently revoked his medical license. Then in 2020, the narrative grew more complex. Writer Sally A. Hodel released a book titled Destined to Die Young. Within it, she claimed Elvis suffered serious genetic health problems. According to her research, Elvis had alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, a disorder affecting lungs and liver. She also suggested he likely possessed a compromised immune system, potentially explaining his frequent illnesses and extensive medication use. If her conclusions prove accurate, perhaps Elvis wasn't merely a substance abuser. Perhaps he was genuinely ill, attempting to treat conditions physicians didn't fully comprehend during that era. His hospital visits weren't purely for pills; they might have represented legitimate emergencies. With the actual cause behind Elvis's death remaining unclear and his personal physician ultimately losing his license, one must wonder, was someone attempting to keep truth concealed forever? Or perhaps someone was finally trying to expose it. Number 3, struggling to keep secrets. Concealed. Spring 2024 delivered news that stunned Elvis Presley's massive following. An unfamiliar company called Nazi-occupied Investments and Private Lending LLC had discreetly filed documentation to auction Graceland, the planet's most renowned rock and roll landmark. According to legal records, Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter and sole controller of his estate, following Lisa Marie Presley's passing in 2023. Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's only child, deceased at 54, her mother Priscilla confirming the news, faced accusations of missing payments on a $3.8 million loan. The announcement emerged unexpectedly. Even the most devoted Elvis followers, who monitor every detail regarding his life and legacy, were blindsided. Immediately, fan pages and discussion forums flooded with panic and confusion. Riley Keough's legal team didn't hesitate. They rushed to Shelby County, Tennessee court, filing an emergency petition to halt the auction. Their assertion was severe: the entire matter was fraudulent. According to filed documentation, Riley never executed any agreements with Nazi-occupied Investments. The signatures appeared forged, as though someone had falsified her identity specifically to seize Graceland. Yet time was depleting. The auction date had already been established. If Riley's team couldn't secure court intervention rapidly, Graceland would be sold within mere days. This meant everything inside Elvis's personal belongings, his rare recordings, and even those upstairs chambers nobody was ever permitted to enter, would transfer to complete strangers. Then, just one day before the scheduled auction, a Tennessee judge delivered his ruling. He immediately stopped the sale. He characterized Graceland as a unique cultural treasure and stated losing it would deeply harm the public. Even more revealing, nobody from Nazi-occupied Investments appeared in court. Riley's attorneys were present, but the company attempting to sell Graceland wasn't. Therefore, the judge's decision proceeded unchallenged. Graceland remained in Presley possession. This wasn't the initial occasion Graceland had attracted such peculiar attention. Since Elvis's death in 1977, the residence had become central to one of celebrity history's strangest concepts, that Elvis Presley never actually died. The first alleged Elvis sighting occurred mere hours following his announced death. A man bearing striking resemblance to him, identifying himself as John Burroughs, a name Elvis actually used during travel, supposedly purchased a one-way airline ticket to Buenos Aires at Memphis Airport. The witness described a heavier Elvis version wearing ivory attire and sunglasses despite late nighttime hours. Then approximately 2 weeks later, a Michigan woman claimed Elvis served her at a Kalamazoo Burger King. She insisted she recognized him immediately when he inquired about additional cheese. His voice was unmistakably familiar. Most people would have anticipated such stories fading, but they didn't. They continued proliferating. By 1979, hundreds of reports emerged nationwide. Elvis was spotted pumping fuel in Oklahoma. Elvis was shopping at a Missouri supermarket. Elvis attended a Nashville concert wearing a false beard. The stories gained such popularity that in 1988, tabloid Weekly World News established a regular feature called Elvis Watch, specifically to monitor all sightings. Over time, theories became increasingly extravagant. Some claimed Elvis assisted the FBI in targeting organized crime, then entered witness protection. Others believed he fabricated his death to escape fame's pressures. One rumor even suggested he had cancer and desired peaceful death without global observation. Believers pointed to peculiar funeral details. They noted his coffin weighed 900 pounds, excessively heavy. They also questioned why the family chose a sealed coffin after already conducting public viewing. Most notably, they observed something odd on his gravestone. His middle name was spelled Aaron instead of Aaron. The family would never make that error, they argued, unless Elvis wasn't actually in the grave. Then came the internet era. During the early 2000s, entire websites emerged solely to prove Elvis remained alive. YouTube videos attempted matching his voice with a preacher named Bob Joyce, someone whose singing sounded uncannily similar to the king. Even presently in 2025, nearly 50 years later, online communities still debate Elvis's possible whereabouts. Some believe he's residing in a quiet town using a different identity. Others believe he still occasionally visits Graceland disguised so nobody will recognize him. For the Presley family, these theories have always been challenging. Pushing back too forcefully makes them appear to be concealing something. Saying nothing allows rumors to grow even wilder. Yet all these theories obscure something far more serious: Elvis didn't need to die when he did. His death could have been prevented if surrounding people had prioritized his health over his financial value. Yet the wild stories about him still being alive allow those people to escape accountability. So once the sale was stopped, Riley made a bold decision. Riley Keough finally did what nobody in her family ever had. She authorized opening the off-limits attic. What had been concealed up there for almost 50 years. Number 4, the attic unsealed. On a frigid morning in January 2025, a small group of archivists wearing white gloves ascended the narrow stairway leading to Graceland's attic. Their footsteps reverberated in the vacant space. Nobody had been up there since August 1907. The atmosphere was dense with dust, untouched for almost 50 years. Yet high overhead, behind a secured door, one mansion section remained pristine. Sealed like a time vessel, nobody dared unlock it. A solitary bare bulb illuminated the lock as the lead archivist gently rotated an aged brass key that had remained with the Presley family since Elvis's passing. The door creaked open as though it had been restraining years of anticipation. As illumination spilled in for the first time in nearly half a century, everyone fell silent. This wasn't merely a dusty old storage area. It resembled a meticulously preserved time capsule. Either Elvis himself or someone close to him had neatly organized the attic into sections, each one narrating a different chapter of his life. The space was considerably larger than anyone anticipated, stretching across the entire housetop, with dormer windows covered by thick blackout curtains. Unlike the rest of Graceland, famous for its bold and flamboyant style, the attic was simple, featuring plain wooden walls and bare floors. The room felt strangely cool thanks to a small air conditioning unit still operating. The Graceland maintenance crew had kept it functioning throughout these years without ever entering inside. Along one wall stood dozens of boxes, each labeled in Elvis's own handwriting. The labels read, Tupelo 1945, First Recordings of Army Days, Hollywood, Comeback Special, and Vegas. It resembled a personal timeline he'd created of his own existence. Yet what stood out most was one box marked simply "After," dated 1907, the year he died. The archivists commenced their meticulous work photographing every item before touching anything. Each box received its own number, and everything inside was cataloged carefully, just like in a museum. It would require months to process everything, but certain items immediately captured their attention. In the Tupelo section, they discovered an aged teddy bear, missing one eye and bearing several patches. This wasn't a souvenir or fan gift. Family records indicated this was Bear Elvis's favorite childhood toy from his impoverished upbringing. His mother Gladys had sewn the patches using fabric scraps from her own clothing. You could still see the faded floral patterns on its chest and arms. When Elvis's father, Vernon, was jailed in 1938 for check fraud, it left Gladys and young Elvis nearly destitute. During those frightening months, Bear was Elvis's closest companion. In the Army Days section, they found a Bible that had been read so extensively, its spine was held together with electrical tape. This wasn't just any Bible, it had belonged to Gladys Presley. She gave it to Elvis when he enlisted in 1958. Inside the front cover, she had written a message instructing him to maintain his faith during service. Throughout the pages, Elvis had underlined verses and scribbled notes, questions, thoughts, and small prayers. One of the final entries was from August 1977, mere days before he died. He had marked Psalm 23. One of the most touching discoveries was a leather-bound yearbook from Humes High School in Memphis. Elvis rarely signed classmates' books. He was shy and frequently teased for his clothing and unconventional style. Yet this one was filled with signatures and notes. Classmates had written messages to him, many encouraging. One note said, "Keep singing Elvis, you're going places." The Hollywood section revealed a different Elvis dimension, his struggle with fame. A leather jacket custom-made for his jailhouse rock role had a small handwritten note in one pocket stating, "Wear this when you need to disappear." Elvis had often expressed feeling trapped in his celebrity role and unable to live normally. This jacket seemed like something he wore when he wanted to blend in just enough to escape briefly. Next to the movie items was a stack of books, not what most people would expect from Elvis. They covered Eastern philosophies, religion, and profound questions about life and what happens after death. Many had underlines and margin notes showing a man searching deeply for answers far beyond the gospel-singing image most people knew. In the Vegas section, the archivists encountered something that stopped them cold. A doctor's report from 1974 marked confidential. The full contents remained sealed until family review, but the cover mentioned heart problems and stated Elvis needed to make major lifestyle changes. Yet he continued performing for 3 more years afterward. Lisa Marie Presley had known what was in the attic, but chose to respect her father's wish to keep it private during her life. After she passed away in 2023, Riley Keough decided it was time to document, though not necessarily share, what was inside. The attic didn't hide an escape plan. It held the heart of a man who knew his time was short and took great care in shaping how the world would remember him. Old dusty tapes held the final words of a man who knew the end was near. As the archivists listened, frozen in silence, Elvis's voice came through shaky, full of feeling. What else was hiding in the dark corners of Grace Land's attic number 5? What was concealed in Elvis's attic? When a team of archivists finally opened the door to Elvis Presley's secured attic in 25, it felt like entering a time machine. Everything inside had been untouched since August 1977. The air was thick with silence, as though it had been holding its breath for almost 50 years. Yet what they found wasn't just old belongings. It felt like fragments of a man the world thought it already knew. One of the most surprising discoveries was a stack of reel-to-reel tapes labeled in plain handwriting, "Practice Sessions 1976." These weren't the polished songs people were accustomed to hearing. They weren't intended for anyone else. It was just Elvis alone, experimenting. You could hear him blending gospel blues and even some early electronic sounds. It was clear he was still exploring ideas, investigating directions nobody ever saw him pursue. Yet then came the moment that made the room go completely quiet, a version of Unchained Melody, stripped down to just his voice, no music, no instruments. His voice was shaky, full of emotion. It was recorded just months before he died, and it didn't sound perfect, but that's what made it so powerful. One music expert later said it felt like he was confronting his own mortality through the song. Every crack in his voice told you that he wasn't just performing, he was feeling every word. As they continued digging, they found things way more personal than glittery stage outfits, scribbled lyrics on napkins, hotel stationery, and notebook pages. Some had lines crossed out. Others had tiny notes to himself. One sheet even had different lyrics to Suspicious Minds that never made it to the final version. It gave a real peek into how his mind worked. Yet perhaps the saddest thing was the pile of unopened fan letters still sealed just like they were when they arrived. There were letters from soldiers thanking him for lifting their spirits. Families shared stories of how his music got them through tough times. Young musicians asked for advice. One letter postmarked 1976 begged him to take a break from touring and look after his health. It was never opened. Perhaps if it had been, things could have turned out differently. Together, these attic finds told a deeper story than any biography ever had. They showed a man full of talent and pain, someone who made history, but also saved old childhood toys. A man who took time to read letters from fans, even while struggling with his own problems. A man trying out bold new music, even while his health was failing. For many fans, these discoveries gave them a sense of peace. The things he left behind weren't random junk, they were kept on purpose. It was like he wanted them to stay right there at Graceland. Yet not everyone felt closure. Some felt the mystery only grew. Why were these deeply personal things hidden for nearly 5 decades? What else might still be locked away? Could there be more to Elvis's story that nobody has uncovered yet? In 2018, Elvis was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom, one more sign of how much he meant to America, not just as a singer, but as someone who changed music forever. Yet perhaps his real legacy isn't in the awards or records. Perhaps it's in those attic boxes where behind the gold trophies and flashy costumes was a man people are still trying to understand. Thank you for reading. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also check out another interesting article by clicking on the link shown on your screen. See you on the other side.